Welcome to the Network Table Podcast. Here's your host, Luke Van Every.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Network Table Podcast. I'm your host, Luke Van Every. I'm really excited today. Our guest today is a new friend, but a very valuable friend. What he is doing with employee engagement and everything over at his company, but don't take it from me. Let's get to know him. Noah, the CEO of Ripple.
Oh, not a problem. Luke, thank you for having me on board. It's all good. I'm glad I could make it. I am the president and CEO of Ripple Analytics. We are a platform that is essentially trying to reinvent the way companies and organizations analyze and assess their talent. Sounds fancy, but basically what we're trying to do is replace the annual review with something meaningful. Everyone knows when I say the annual review, if you're 25, 30 years or older, you cringe. 90% of people hate the process. Managers hate it. They'd rather be doing what they're paid to do, and that's working. Owners hate it because they see it as a time suck and just not an effective or efficient process. And the employees hate it because they don't know what they're expecting. They're kind of going in blind. And generally speaking, the annual review is a negative event. They're trying to, managers, owners are trying to ding down expectations. What Ripple does is we level set it, and we harness technology to gauge levels of psychological interaction in the workplace, which again sounds real heady. It's really not. How do you work with each other? What you do impacts everyone you interact with every day. And what we're trying to show managers and owners is use objective data, timely data to make decisions, to team build, to be stronger and more dynamic. So that's the end goal, is to create stronger cultured organizations.
Now, you said that was all fantastic, but you said annual review. Are we just doing it on an annual basis? I used to have to do quarterly reviews as well. So talk to us a little bit about that. Is it just an annual thing, or?
So we worked with an IO psychologist, Dr. Frank Schipper, years ago when we were developing our platform. And really, the whole concept of getting feedback to base any decisions on, whether it's an annual review for compensation or whether it's a week-to-week discussion about how your employees are doing. We established a once a month frequency is the best. That's the target. That's the sweet spot. The human brain only remembers things accurately for 6 to 8 weeks. So even if you're doing it quarterly, which is every 3 months, you're really not doing the person you're reviewing or discussing justice, because you're blocking out at least 4, 5, 6 of those weeks of that quarter. So even though quarterly is much better than annual, the best way to do it, the sweet spot, as I said, is quarterly. And that way you also don't get survey fatigue. We've had some companies in the past that want to do it weekly, and after about 6 weeks, they're like, yeah, no, it's not working. The employees don't like doing it. So yeah, monthly is the sweet spot, but we can do frequency on any level based on an organizational desire.
And I could see that being a positive, right? You can lose a lot if I'm doing a review of January, February, and March. At the end of March, I may have myself personally have already forgotten about what happened in January, and there's probably a lot of things that might have happened right up into that week that are affecting my emotions and my survey. And I might have been super pumped in January, but then something happened last week and now it's affecting the entire survey of a 3-month period. So I see where the positivity could come from doing it monthly. Would I be correct?
Absolutely. And what's interesting is what Ripple tries to do is kind of level set the expectations of both sides of the discussion. The traditional approach is the managers here and the employees here, because the employee really doesn't know what they're getting when they go into that conference room for 20 minutes, right? Now the employee has access to their dashboard, so they can see how they're doing. If their interaction is lower in terms of their scoring, they can go to their manager. They can be proactive. And managers likewise, if they see that their employees are crushing it in terms of their human interaction, go slap them on the back and say, great job. Don't wait 12 months to say, Luke, you remember last March you did that thing that was so great? And you're like, what? Like, especially millennials and Gen Zers, they don't want to wait 11 and a half months to be told they did something right. And almost more importantly, they don't want to wait 11 and a half months to be told they did something wrong. tell me I did something wrong so I can explain to you, one, maybe I didn't do it wrong. Maybe I did it differently than you would have done it. Or two, if I did do it wrong, let me learn from that mistake versus 11 and a half months later when you're blindsided with like, I did what last March? Are you kidding me? It's good stuff.
I connect with that 100%. I'm definitely a words of affirmation guy. Like I played sports for a long time.
Yep.
I can take direction, but I want to be told like, hey, good, you did a good job. And I used to tell management all the time, it's like, listen, if I'm doing something that's incorrect, you got to let me know, because I'm going to keep doing it because I think it's working. So how do we get the information? Is it a platform? Is it an app? How are we gathering the data?
So we're web-based. You get a link every month. Every user gets a link every month for surveys, 5-question surveys for every teammate on that person's team. The ideal size for teams is 5, 6, 7. You don't want to have 25 people on a team, because then you have 25 surveys every month, and the one thing analytics companies hate to hear is survey fatigue. Because it's one thing to gather feedback, it's an entirely different thing to gather meaningful, genuine, authentic feedback. And if I'm on my 23rd survey in the last 30 minutes, I'm going down, I'm just giving all 3s. We're a 1 to 5 scale, 1 never, 5 always. And yeah, so we push it out. You have a link. When you click the link on your email, it goes right into the open survey, and you finish them. Each survey is 5 questions. We track data along 5 core personality traits. They're called the Big 5 in IO psychology: curiosity, conscientiousness, commitment, cooperation, and consistency. And every month you get a survey, and each of those questions, 5 questions, one of them will fall into each of those buckets. So you're always getting information on each of those personality traits. And then we have commentary functionality and some functionality that allows you to actually, write a comment about Luke, or write a comment about Mary or Susan or whoever, so that the manager and the person receiving it, because remember, I can see my dashboard, I can see everything that people are saying, but it's anonymous. So I don't know the 5 or 6 people that are giving me feedback. I don't know that Julie gave me a 1 on this score, or Doug gave me a 5 on that question. So it's really over time. And again, I'm fighting tradition, right? So over time, I can show data. It's really cool to show, we largely validate, you might have 100 people in your organization. Well, 80 people on our platform, you're gonna say, yeah, okay, I get it. That's probably pretty much where I thought they would fall into. But then those 20, the 10 people that are a little lower than you really ever thought they would be, and then the 10 people that are a little higher, that's where it really becomes cool, because some people just are naturally more introverted, and they're not going to be outgoing and tell their managers certain things, but the data will show that they may have hidden talents that are not being utilized properly.
And the most important piece of it is utilizing the data, right? You get your first, quarter of data back from your employees. You then have to turn and start focusing on, the negative to turn it into a positive. Your trajectory of data needs to go up in a positive manner.
I would actually, yes, but more importantly, the celebrating success, as you mentioned, in a team environment, right? Yes, if you've got the negative, you've got to address it, because generally speaking, those people are going to be difficult or possibly toxic people in your organization. But as important, if not more importantly, you want to see and celebrate the people that are operating on a high level, having a positive impact on your organization, and using those people to replicate whatever they're doing, however they're acting. If you've got someone that's scoring really high in all those 5 personality traits, maybe use those people to onboard new employees, because they obviously get it. They're positive influences.
Oh, I like that. I like
that.
And
let me touch on one thing you started on the last question. Is it's one thing to gather feedback. It's another thing to utilize it, to implement it, to create change, meaningful change, trying to accomplish goals. We're not about just gathering data so managers can look in the back room and say, oh, I knew Luke was going to be like that, or I knew Noah was going to be like that. It's, Luke, we got to get you some help on this front, or Noah, we got to get you help on this front, or Noah, you're great on this front. How can you help Luke? A lot of things that I've been reading in the last year and a half deal with peer coaching. We do a lot of outside consulting. So if you need help organizationally, we have consultants that we can recommend. But there's this fascinating new, it's not brand new, but in the last couple of years, it's kind of developed, and it's peer coaching, where you find someone within your organization who is strong at doing something, and you utilize that person as a resource to address weakness within the organization. So if I can help you on certain things, then I do that. And if you can help me on certain things, we can do that. And it builds synergy within, it creates stronger culture. And the end game, as we've talked about, is not just a kumbaya, oh, I got honest data for Luke. It's ROI. Luke wants to work in an organization that respects the fact that he wants to know how he's doing. It's a tremendous pain point. A lot of organizations is the rate of attrition, losing good people, because you generally lose good people. The bad people tend to stick around.
And, you're extremely valuable in the virtual world, extremely, because we need to know we're not in the office sitting next to each other, but it doesn't end once we go back to the office. This was needed before and will be needed. That data is extremely valuable. And I love the part where you talked about, we called them mentors or accountability partners within the organization, especially as new hires. You need that comfortability, right? You need that help integrated into the culture, and to be able to place the individuals that are positive in the company with the new hires is just going to make them positive individuals as well.
And flip it, right? So if Luke's super positive and you're going to have him, on board and help with new employees, and Doug is super negative, keep them away from Doug. Doug does his job well, but he doesn't interact well with people. One of the things when you talk about the remote workforce and the impact of data and collecting data and trying to work with people in a remote setting, we've pivoted a bit over the last 13, 14 months to show managers and owners that eventually the new reality is going to be some sort of hybrid, right? Everyone was working from home. Eventually some people are going to go back to the office in a more traditional aspect. What we suggest is, when you're looking at candidates to work from home, maybe I use Doug as the example of the negative person when he interacts. If Doug wants to work from home and he can do his stuff from home effectively, and he's a negative influence when he's people on people, Doug's a good candidate to work from home. One of the personality traits we track is consistency. And if you can look at data over the last 13 months and find out who's consistent, those consistent employees that are working remotely are good candidates to stay remotely if they have other personality traits that don't necessarily jive within the traditional environment.
That is spot on.
Yeah.
I love that. You and I can sit here and talk about this all day. Let's get to know you a bit. Take us back. Yeah. Ripple has been around for 6 years now.
Yep. October 2014, we incorporated. October 23rd, 2014.
How'd you get here? What'd you do before this? What was
Yeah, I'll give you the Reader's Digest version of the stuff pre 2011. So 2011 is a major year in my life. So I was a lawyer. I am a lawyer. Once a lawyer, always a lawyer. And I grew up. Let's go all the way back.
Let's go all the way back.
So I grew up on a farm in Vermont, southern Vermont, with 7 siblings. My parents, they're originally from Long Island. They moved up in 1970. I was born in 1971, attended a 3-room schoolhouse with 48 kids, K through 8. Went to a high school where I graduated with 27 or 28 kids. Went to Boston College, got off the farm, had to go to the city. I was dead set on getting to some sort of urban atmosphere. Eventually ended up at Brooklyn Law School, practiced law, commercial litigation, real estate construction, general transactional corporate stuff. And then in 2011, I went out on my own. And I had that moment where I think a lot of people do. If they don't want to admit it, that's fine. But you kind of put your feet on the floor, getting out of bed, and you're like, am I going to do this for the rest of my life? Like, is this, I was 43, I think at the time. And I'm like, is this really what I want to do for the rest of my life? Because if I'm not, then I got to make a adjustment. And then my good friend, Derek Hedges, who co-founded Ripple with me, was diagnosed with stage 4 cancer. And we really bonded over the next few years and just kind of got real kind of deep into like what we wanted to do to make an impact on society, really. It sounds crazy, but we started to research stuff that made people unhappy. and in the corporate setting, because unfortunately, most of us work 40 to 45% of our lives, right? So, and where is it? This doesn't make things any easier, right? At least our parents could leave the office at 5 or 6 o'clock, go back to the office at 8:30, 9 o'clock the next morning, and maybe a random emergency phone call, but not 24/7. And so we started looking into what people don't like about their jobs. And in early 2014, I got a text. Derek and I would text throughout the day, sometimes 3 o'clock in the morning, and he goes, "Well, what do you think about the annual review? I mean, doesn't it suck? We just went through it." He worked at a big company,
Nice.
and he had just gone through with his teams, and he's like, "It's just a waste of time." So we started researching, and lo and behold, we find out that a top 5 most anxious events in an employee's annual work cycle was the annual review. And I was managing a firm in Lower Manhattan at the time. Well, I'm sorry, I had my own firm then, but I had managed a firm for several years. And I remember doing the annual review. It was mid-December every year. You come down to the mahogany tabled conference room with all the law books behind me. And I'd sit there like this, and I'd say, Joe, you really have to work harder and, bring in some new clients. And Joe was a good guy. And Joe, if we did well fiscally, the firm, Joe did well with his bonus. If we didn't do well fiscally, it really had not much to do with Joe. And so it was a lot of just kind of me throwing words at Joe, and Joe probably left there dizzy. Like, what was that all about? So we started doing some research, and we employed the help of a good friend of Derek's and become a good friend of mine, Mark Nevins. He runs a consulting firm in Manhattan. I discussed the help of Dr. Frank Shipper, an IO psychologist down in Maryland, and we started to draw out what we would think would be an effective solution to this problem. And we founded Ripple in October 2014, and we started writing code in late November 2014, and we've had our first beta user in April 2015, and we've been off and running. I mean, we've got users, we've got most important to me, we've got organizations that have used the data to make significant managerial change. I mean, we had one company that used the data to justify making changes, and that change worked. More importantly, right? I mean, I wouldn't be talking about it if the change was miserable. It actually worked. So, and so when we started Ripple, we really wanted to make people's lives a little better. Take that anxiety from the annual review and create a more productive process where people could learn that they are effective and positive in certain aspects, and if they're negative in other aspects, try to get them help. But listen, maybe people just aren't. Some people aren't naturally cooperative or naturally conscientious. That doesn't mean they're a horrible employee. That means as a manager, what do? I keep those people away from job roles that stress conscientiousness and cooperation. So it's really, and that's how we got to where we're at. And I enjoy what I do. I really enjoy working with people. I mean, we met several months ago, and it's, you click with certain people that get it. And then you also over time get to know that if those people aren't clicking with you, chances are they're stuck in the traditional, well, we've always done it this way mode, where the annual review is more of a compliance exercise, check the box, that kind of thing. And I move on because chances are I'm not convincing that 65-year-old CEO that he should be using Ripple.
And let me, before I ask that question, 7 siblings.
Yeah.
Which one are you?
So there's 7 total. I have 2 older brothers. Then there's me. Then there's my younger brother. Then there's my younger sister. Then there's my younger brother. And then there's my youngest sister.
So you're almost in the middle. We're okay with that. I'm the middle of 5, so we're good. If you were the youngest, I'm the youngest or the oldest, we'd have to stop the meeting. I'm just kidding, everyone.
I'm the middle of 5. My parents are great people.
There you go.
They adopted my sisters. So I was the middle child for a long time, and then I was happy enough to move up the ladder. Yeah, exactly.
My wife is an only child, and I'll tell her all the time, like, your only child is showing, and then when I don't want to share something, she's like, your middle child is showing.
I'm like, 100%.
You didn't have to share.
I get it all the time. You're such a middle child, and I'm like, is that a good thing?
Sorry,
yeah, I can usually tell from the tone whether it's a good thing or a bad thing.
Oh, that's fantastic. So back to gathering data, you talked about annual reviews being in mid-December, which I don't see a problem. There's not really anything else going on in December in people's lives, right?
No, not at all. It's really easy. The holidays don't complicate things. No, it's fine.
So actually, the client can actually take the data throughout the year, and as the company improves from utilizing the data and making small or major adjustments, you can turn that into a celebration, because now you have a year, you can see the trajectory, you can see the changes that you've made, you can see the happiness in the better performance.
Yep. And by no means does Ripple promote the concept of having monthly compensation discussions. That
Right.
annual compensation discussion, I get it. You're not going to say, "Oh, Luke, you did great this month. Here's a raise 5%. Luke, this month you didn't do so great. Here, we got to take that 5% back." And then the next month, "Luke, you did great, 7%." And the next month, we got to take 3% back. I mean, that would be lunacy. But at least in December, and you really shouldn't have the annual review in December anyway, but let's say you do the annual review in April, you can at least, the person going in knows what to expect. I mean, I'm not sure your experience with the annual review, but I remember people coming in when I was reviewing them, and they thought they were going to have, this huge bonus and huge raise, and I was going to lavish praise upon them. And I'm like, what? I didn't see that at all this year. You're lucky you have a job. And so what happens with Ripple is everyone knows their dashboard. So when they go into that meeting and then maybe their scores and their interactions were less positive than they wanted, they're not expecting a whole heck of a lot. They're expecting to have some goals set and, try to right the ship. And that's really, knowledge is power. So you bring in people with reasonable expectations for that annual compensation discussion, and, the levels of disappointment are going to decrease.
Yeah. And, it's not, and I think we're focusing a lot on the employee, right? I'm a strong believer employees don't leave companies, they leave management.
Yep. 100%.
And this data can be shown to show, management, like, all right, listen, you might have managed individuals back in the day a certain way and it worked. And this new crowd of employees coming through the workforce is different.
Yep.
We have to adjust, and or we're going to lose good people. Or you find out, listen, this manager is just not a good fit for this team. Maybe we move them. I could sit here and just run so many different situations with to utilize that data.
There's two comments that have on that. There's two levels of review, right? The manager reviewing their teams, their direct reports, but also the executives and the owners reviewing the managers, because the owners can also see manager team to team. So if one team seems to be crushing it and another team doesn't, and then there's a couple teams in the middle, find out what that team that's crushing it does right, and try to replicate that with the teams that aren't doing so great. The other comment I'd make is, when you're talking about the different generations of workforce, right? There's four generations currently. There's the boomers, there's the Gen Xers, the millennials, and then the Gen Zers, which are creeping up, right? So there has to be an appreciation for the levels of appreciation for feedback. Boomers have no idea, on a large part, the importance of feedback. They've read some articles, they've attended some webinars, they understand feedback is somehow important to Gen Xers and millennials and Gen Zers, but we can't really put our finger on it. Gen Xers, unlike millennials, Gen Xers are like, we get it. We get the science behind it. I'm a Gen Xer, right? So I get it. The feedback's important. Engagement leads to productivity, because your people are actually working harder, knowing that what they do impacts everybody else. The millennials, they need the feedback. They want the feedback because they've been raised on feedback. Good job, Johnny. Good, throughout and the Gen Zers expect it. So it goes from not knowing really what it's about, knowing it's important, trying to implement it, needing it, right? The millennials need it, and then the Gen Zers expect it. So when they expect it, so when a 28-year-old expects something and a 65-year-old executive doesn't know what the heck the importance of feedback is, that gap is huge, because they don't really appreciate it that much, and the Gen Zers need it, they expect it. So using the feedback, getting the feedback in an easy, simple, dynamic way, is huge, because if you don't make it easy, no one's going to do it. Participation, I could have the greatest algorithms and science-based platform in the world, but if the process is clunky and not simple, no one's going to use it. Simple as that.
I love the physical data in the dashboard as well. Myself and 65% of the planet are visual learners.
Absolutely.
Being able to have that and see it and visualize it. I mean, we could sit here and you can sit and talk to employees and managers every single day, but how much is it actually going to sink in for the majority of the population? And myself included, I'm not knocking anyone.
Yep.
I need visual. I'm a visual learner. I want to see it. So when you showed me the platform, it wasn't even my data, and I was already clicking. I'm like, oh yeah, this is where we can make some movements just to improve.
Yep.
The entire point of your company is to improve the culture and of the company. Am I wrong?
So what the feedback does is so there's a self-survey component and then your colleague surveys, right? So the two data pools, we put them together. So we see how far your self-evaluation is from your colleagues' evaluation of you, right? And the closer those scores are, the greater levels of self-awareness that employee has. Wow. Why is self-awareness is important? For one simple reason. Self-aware people are happier, they're more genuine, they're more productive, and they're more respected, right? The respected part,
big,
huge,
because all generations.
It goes all levels, all ages. You have a 10-year-old that's self-aware versus a 70-year-old that's self-aware. Or you have, and we've all had them, managers that think they're the greatest thing and they have no idea who they are because they're faking it. They think they have to be this person in the office versus be who you are and develop skills that play on your strengths. That's self-awareness. Self-awareness, the ROI on self-awareness is they're more productive. It's self-awareness is huge for productivity and huge for culture. So if you want, there's 1,000 different definitions for culture. Culture, in my opinion, is who wants to go to work, not just who will go to work because they're going to be paid. Who wants to go to work? If you have 65% of your people that want to go to work, you generally are going to have a pretty strong culture and probably pretty high levels of self-awareness. So yeah, I mean, the data visual, I mean, one of the things, again, not to go back to the dreaded annual review, but you go in there and you don't have any data. You have nothing to expect. And I might be the greatest thing for my law firm. And my manager tells me, you stink at this, you got to improve on that. If I had my dashboard where I knew going into that, I'd be like, what are you talking about, man? I'm like one of the most influential and positive, impactful people in your office. And you don't get that. And flip side, the manager knows you have that dashboard now. So the manager can't just say, Luke, you got to work harder, you're negative influence. I mean, no, I'm not. You can see right here, my numbers are right here. So it level sets. And that's really, it can be a little intimidating for some organizations because, it's one thing to want to know what the data is until you get the data and you don't like it.
It was always tough for me, the self-review, because I knew what I was doing and how hard I was working and where my success trajectory was going to be and where I was going to be at the end of the quarter, and to try to sum it up all in a year and then tell somebody in one time, like where I'm going to improve next year. Like my 2020 review, just balled up, throw it or my 2019, just balled up, throw it in the trash. Cause guess what? 2020 was nothing like we thought.
Yep.
So it was pointless. Doing this, what is how long does it take? We got to do it. We're going to do it monthly. How long does it take an employee? How much time do they have to allocate to take the survey monthly?
There are 5 questions, short survey questions. So if you have 6 people on your team, each survey takes about 16 to 18 seconds to complete. So you're talking about a minute and a half. It's nothing. It's absolutely nothing. And one of the things, when you said the 2019 review, you ball it up, throw it away. That's one of the problems with the traditional performance management module is that it's a one-off. It's a static event for 2019. It's a static event for 2018, 17, 16. I'll ask organizational leaders, I'll say, well, you do the annual review, the traditional performance review approach. How do you compare year to year? Well, what do you mean? I'm like, well, how do you compare what Luke did in 2016 to 2020? And how do you say, well, 2020 is different? Because we all know 2020 is different. But 2017 to 2019, there was no cataclysmic pandemic event in any of those years. So did you trend the data? Once you have the data, you can slice and dice it and compare different teams, different seasonal. I mean, ideally, when you start looking at, I mean, it really gets, you take a deeper dive, and Luke his scores go way off in the winter because he doesn't like the cold, because he's affected.
That's true.
Right.
It's a fact. It's a fact.
So guess what? As your manager, you get 3-4 weeks of vacation a year, right? I'm going to tell you, Luke, you got to take 2 of them between November and February. I know you just got to do it, man. You got to work with me. And it's not because I want you out of the office. Look, Luke, here's your data. This dive down during December through January, just take a week, take a couple weeks. And, you know, if you want to work remotely a little bit, but go to somewhere warm, go play golf down in Florida, do something. And that's where you can really harness data over a lot of different metrics. It's not just, do we like Luke as an employee? Let's help Luke. You know, if you see, you know, Luke, I always use the example, you know, when my dad was sick, you know, a few years ago, if my score went down and my manager said, what's going on? You know, my dad had a mild heart attack and I'm just kind of preoccupied. As a manager, what do? You say, Noah, go to Vermont, go hang out with your dad for a couple of days.
Oh.
That builds loyalty to an nth degree that you can't even calculate with data. Yeah. As opposed to in December, when I get my annual review and we've got the data, let's say they're using Ripple and they're only using it on an annual basis. And they say, you know, no, in May, you really dipped off in these 2-3 weeks. And maybe I'll remember that my dad was in the hospital. Maybe I'll remember certain things that happened, but you know, 7-8 months later, you know, oh yeah, I think my dad may have been sick. And then the manager's like, oh, okay, sure. Okay. Right. As opposed to acting on that information. Yeah. and becoming a more respected manager, because as you said, and a lot of people know it, people quit managers. They don't generally quit their organization. They don't quit their job. They don't like the person they're working for. And in today's day and age, I mean, I was at least raised professionally by boomers where loyalty is, you know, the old be happy you have a job mantra, right? Millennials and Gen Zers, that's not a blip on the radar. Be happy I have a job. What? I'll live at home and, you know, do consulting work online. Happy I have a job. Well, how obnoxious is that, you know? So yeah, it's cool, because once you start using data on all fronts, then you justify, it's a circular pattern, right? Once you can use that data on a lot of different fronts, then you can justify gathering more data and then using that data and then gathering more data. So it's really, I get excited, as you can tell, about like the long-term implications of what we're doing, and then just customizing it. And, you know, some organizations will want surveys put out on industry specific. They'll want performance, you know, KPIs and all those things. And we can do that. I mean, it's a customizable, we use third-party content all the time. And it's really just, you know, the potential for using our platform to gather meaningful data and then implement change based on that data is just huge. And it gets me excited.
It is huge. And I am super excited to know you, Noah. Thank you so much for your time today. I don't want to give more.
Okay.
Because we could, you and I can sit here and talk about it all day.
I know.
How can we get in touch with Ripple to take a deeper dive?
Yeah. So contact me, Noah at RippleCrew, RippleCrew.com. Check us out at the same website, ripplecrew.com. And let me know how I can help you, because a lot of organizations have the pain point. They just, you know, sort of, and I appreciate the last 13, 14 months, the bandwidth to expand into new solutions is generally difficult to find. But the solution isn't going to find itself. You gotta work for it a little bit, and I can certainly, I'm here to help. And at the end of the day, as Derek and I set out to do this, we want to really make meaningful change to people's professional lives. And not to plug it a little bit more, but if you're happier at work, guess what? You're happier at home. You know, you're happier on the weekends. You're happier when you vacation with your family, when you meet your friends to play a round of golf. If you're horribly negative at work and you hate your job, guess what? you generally don't leave that at the office. You take it home with you, and you're more volatile at home. You're more volatile on the golf course, which I can be volatile on the golf course for another host of reasons. But and that's the net benefit. If you spend so much time at work and you can become a better employee, then chances are you're going to be a better friend, spouse, etc. So thanks, Luke. It was a pleasure being on. I appreciate it.
No, I'm super happy to have you as a new friend, a continued friend, and an absolute valuable partner. True Compare PEO is super excited to have you a part of our partnership, to be able to bring you in to help the clients that are in need. And I can't thank you enough. And we look forward to talking to you again soon.
Thanks, Luke.
Thanks, buddy.
Take care, man.
That was awesome.
For more information, please visit truecompare.peo.com.